Well, welcome everybody to the CRE Arena. Today we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Ken Ashley on the call, who is an executive director with Cushman Wakefield out of Atlanta, Georgia. So, Ken, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Augie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get into many things that you've done in your career. One of the things that recently has made massive waves is the commercial real estate influencer list. Right. Known as CREI, which Ken is the founder of that list. So we will get into that and we will talk all about that. But really to start us off, Ken, if you could just get into how you got to where you are today, maybe go through your childhood, where you were raised, how schooling, how you got into commercial real estate, et cetera.
Well, we'll give a succinct version of that. But I'm born and raised in Atlanta. My practice is based in Atlanta. I do think there's a corollary in some cases between practicing real estate in the location where you grew up, although our practice is now national and international, but there's a lot of relationships we have here. Dad was a landscape architect for commercial developers, which is sort of how, I'll share in a second, I got into the business. Mom was a school teacher, 2 brothers. And so fast forward to today, went to the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and got out of school and started at NCR selling computers to community banks. What I learned about community bankers is they love free lunches, Georgia football, and they will rarely say yes or no. And as a sales guy, either one was okay with me. And so I lasted a couple of years there. I just couldn't get momentum in terms of the decision making. My degree is in sales and sales management and marketing. It's what I thought about my whole career and what I love to do. And so I worked at my dad's shop, the landscape architecture shop, for a couple of years as a CFO. And then one day there was a successful tenant rep named Brad Smith, who's still a friend of mine. He walked in the shop and he had a build a suit going on, and Brad was in one of those super expensive suits, and he looked great, and he walked out of the meeting and he had a big smile on his face, and I walked up to him. I knew him. We'd been hunting together, and I said, "Man, why are you so happy?" He said, "It's real estate. It's fantastic." And I said, "Okay, can we go to breakfast?" And so that's how it started.
Yeah. That's awesome. So then did you ask for a job there, and how'd you get, in the business from there?
Well, Brad did he gave me such an amazing gift that I'll be repaying back my entire career. And I'm actually working on a book now called The Real Estate Prescription, which talks about our business and how young people can get in. And I have a lot of ideas after these years in the business of what works and what doesn't. But Brad helped. He helped with some relationships. He explained what tenant reps do, which is sort of an opaque issue if you're not in the industry like you and I are and your listeners. But the other thing he did was he gave me a list of brokerages to go talk to. There were 10 he wrote down. I ultimately talked to 13. And, I'm going to write in the book about how some of those meetings went and a strategy to stay in touch with people. Because many times it happens to me, it happens to young people come in and they talk to us one time and they think, they are the headline in our heads forever, but there's a lot going on. But I was able to stay in touch with a gentleman at Cushman Wakefield, the shop I really wanted to work at. And one thing led to another, and his name was Mike Elting. He gave me a call and invited me in to be part of an industrial leasing team, a tenant rep team initially. And I was very excited. It was one of the better days of my life. And I went home that night and I told my wonderful wife, Karen, now my wife of 32 years, this great opportunity I had. And she started asking questions, and so no draw, because I never wanted debt. Sort of harem scarum benefits back then. The training was how to use the voicemail system. It's very different today, by the way, at Cushman Wakefield. We're a great shop. And really no guarantee of anything. And so it took me about 30 minutes to say that, because I was talking way too long. And she said, well, I have something to share too. And I thought we were going to talk about the social plans for the weekend. And she said, I'm pregnant.
Wow.
And then, so I just took a commission-only job, and I couldn't hardly sleep that night. And the next morning I called my friend Chip Patterson, and I got a job valeting cars, and I had several side jobs going, worked until, 4 a.m, parking cars and working really hard. And I went 8 months without a paycheck, without making a deal. And I can relate to the self-doubt, the anxiety, the fear that young brokers feel, because I have been there. I've laid in bed so worried and so down on myself. And I walked in to quit. Elting talked me out of it because he talked about a concept called sunk cost. And basically what he meant was I'd spent 8 months of my life. And he said, what do you think your corporate salary would have been? I wrote down a number. He did the quick math. He said, Ken, it's going to take you 4 years to make that back. Why don't you hang around a little bit longer and see if you could be successful? So fortunately I did.
Wow.
And about 2 weeks later, a transaction we didn't expect to closed. And with some of the dollars from that deal, we bought the bed frame that we sleep in this very day. So I wake up every morning and I'm thankful.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And yeah, what a way to get into the business. I know once you make that jump into the 100% commission role, I mean, for me, it was like the guys at the firm, they did have to kind of make me walk the plank.
Yeah.
And I was being paid a small stipend to do research in the research department at my firm.
Yeah.
But then they were walking me off the plank. And then I was holding on to that security. Like I said, only two small kids to support at the time. We've multiplied now.
Yeah.
But
Four.
at the time, it's like, man, that's such a scary leap to make. But just the faith when it comes to that jump and that self-doubt, I mean, other than that good mentor, what else kind of kept you hanging on? Did you just have that strong conviction, that belief in yourself? And has it always been that way for you, or what was there that kept you hanging on?
Well, I appreciate the question. I do think mentorship is very important, and having people that you can talk to are obviously really critical. But let me show you something that I have something I call the hope audit. And so in the morning, when you wake up, you contextualize and look at the good things that are happening in your life. And so the white balls represent all the blessings, your wife, your kids, your house, your degree, everything, your parents. And the red, there are 3 red balls in here, and they're the problems. And all we can focus on are the problems. So I think contextualization and that hope audit of understanding what's going on and what could go well, the phrase, when we're in a tough negotiation or in a tough deal or in a tough situation, there are a lot of ways to win here. What is the moat of safety around us? And some people start with awfulizing and looking at the worst case. That is a strategy. But I want to look at an optimal case, maybe not the best case, just to know that it could work out. And it's easy to say burn the ships and all in and all that stuff. I know there are a lot of people out there that are suffering right now. I do want to give you encouragement that it's actually better to get in the business at the bottom than the top. You can make a lot of money over the next 5 years, and we can get into why that is the case. But I'm very optimistic about office and about tenant rep and about generally the future of commercial real estate. So it's all about contextualization.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. And I love that you just pulled that out. At first, I was thinking, I was at a bachelor party this past weekend, and we went golfing. So I was thinking that was about how many balls that I went through in 18 holes, about 20 balls. But no, that's a really good way to look at things. And so in that, when you're focusing on the white balls, it's like, hey, you can then, I assume, be sustained for much longer, because once you get to that point of despair or the bills are coming due, whatever that is, if you're just focusing on those red balls, then it's like, that's all you focus on. And that's probably what ends up coming more your way, versus if you focus on the blessings in your life, that can sustain you longer through those hard times.
Yeah. And I think it's about looking ahead and, not having something we call ants. Ants, you get a voicemail from someone, and the automatic negative thought is, I didn't get hired. Or, someone asks to meet with you, and immediately, if they don't have a subject in the meeting, we assume the worst. So if you can flip that on its head and assume, instead of an automatic negative thought, an automatic positive thought, life is about the lens through which you look. And if you look at it if you're looking for the white balls, you're going to find the white balls. If you're finding the red balls, you're looking for the red balls. And most people are about as happy as they make up their mind to be.
Wow. I'm taking notes over here. Ants. Okay. I love that, man. That's so much further. That's, expounding on the glass being half full. But I mean, viewing that from a different lens, and then also different situations. I mean, I think, like you're saying, we can't get enough of that, because constantly we wake up every day and there's problems, there's things that come our way that we did not expect. And what you do with those, and what those do to you, what you let them do to you, usually it can make or break and go any which way that you choose, or really how you view it or perceive it.
And I'll tell you the other benefit of thinking about life that way. So you have your own emotional and psychological well-being, and obviously your family is looking to you as a leader, but your clients or your prospects and people. If we allow ourselves to live lives of fear and desperation, people can tell, and you just got to develop the quiet self-confidence that you're going to figure it out. If you're a religious person, that can be a part of it as well, whatever your belief system is. And then the people you surround yourselves with is really critical. So back to the beginning of the career, I've been there, know how lonely and scary it can be. Reach out and find some friends, and spend 10 minutes a morning writing down in a journal all the things you're so blessed to be around, and that'll help you focus.
Yeah. That's incredible, man. I didn't know we were going to get that, but I'm extremely grateful that you just went into that. So, well, that's a big part of, young people getting into the business, trying to sustain. Maybe they're in the valley and feeling it. I mean, that's, I could probably go back and listen or go back and watch that one a few times. So, man, I really appreciate that. So, so the first, couple years in the business,
Right.
what were some things that, went really well for you? I mean,
Yeah.
we saw that it was a struggle to get in and get that first paycheck. But once you got rolling the first, year or two after that, what are some things that went really well? And then what were some other things that, those other hardships in the first, couple years? And then ultimately, what would you do differently?
Well, I think things that went well were the great people that are here at Cushman Wakefield. Then it was a very different shop, but I remember, the colorful people that were here in the office then. And, one of the things I wanted to do the most at work is just sit in someone's office and listen to them talk. And it was so helpful that people would just let me sit there. And if you think about your own practice now, there's no one in my office today, but if there were, I mean, it's a little bit of a investment in someone to let them sit there and listen. You have the conversations, but listening to the deals was helpful. The fact that I'm at a shop that had a lot of transactions going on was helpful, because I would do anything to go on a tour. So I think all those things were very helpful. What I observe about our business is we use the blacksmith model. There's not really a lot of college courses that teach you how to be a tenant rep. They're real estate courses, but they're mainly finance focused, which is fine. And in order to be a successful tenant rep in the United States today, you have to be a number of things. You have to be part counselor. You certainly have to be a salesperson. You have to be an excellent listener. You have to be organized. You have to be an architect, because you have to understand how this product works that we sell. And you have to, at least, you can't be a lawyer, but you have to understand this contract that is known as the lease. I passionately believe that we can add huge value by getting involved in the lease conversation as well. You got to know negotiations, and you got to know the market. What I experienced is, as I sat down at my desk, and I'll never forget, making the first calls, I prayed people wouldn't answer the phone, because I didn't know what to say. Can I help you with your real estate? I mean, what's the value proposition? I didn't have any experience. I didn't have any confidence. And so if I were starting again today to answer your question, I think before I went out there to go on the offense, I would have a little bit of a pregame plan. Go meet with an architect and understand how things work. Go meet with a really good lawyer and understand how the lease document works. So just get some points. For example, I teach a class on advanced lease analysis, and we have, the big five of the lease. These are the 5 things you ought to worry about. So can you cheat code your way into success by learning from others in this environment, and come up with a skills inventory that you think you're going to need to be successful? I work as an office and industrial tenant rep, but there are many different types of professions in this. So in your niche, maybe you talk to the senior person, the senior man or woman, and ask them, what is the skills inventory? And then go chase that down. If you're even thinking about getting in the business, there are tremendous resources available. I tell young people all the time, go read the market reports that commercial real estate companies put up. It's free.
Yeah.
You will really study that and become conversant, then that will help you a lot. So that's what I would change. And then today, I think I would become very conversant by talking to other friends in the business as I was getting started. with my tech stack to understand today. I mean, we have amazing technology and advantages that I couldn't have even dreamed of when I started years ago. And I know, Augie, you are working on new CRM, which I'm sure your listeners will know about. And in our pre-show conversation, you said it right. Most every broker hates their CRM. So maybe people need to reach out to you to get an idea of what a better CRM is. And you got to stay on top of it. So back to the
Yeah.
idea that when someone calls on someone, that they're the headline forever. Here's the way I would describe calling on someone. If I call on you, Augie, and you're the director of real estate of XYZ company, and you got some big deal, and you're kind enough to give me your time, and we can talk about how to get the meeting in a minute. The thing is, when I leave, you got a million other things going on. You got a lot of people pulling on you and tugging on you. So how do I stay in touch? Here's a simple way. I look at your social media and I try to find out what you're interested in, where you went to school, what your hobbies are. And over the next 6 weeks, I'm going to send you at least 3 articles, and they're going to be with a handwritten note, and they're ripped out of a magazine, actually printed out, not emailed, not electronic, with a short note that says, "Hey, Augie, we talked about sailing. I was flipping through a magazine on a recent airplane ride, and I saw this article about sailing, and I thought of you. Hope you're well." So you're
Yeah.
aligning on non-business interests and whatever that person shared, or a thought about a school. Do people, when they receive those notes, know that it's part of a process? Yes, but people love to be sold to, and they appreciate the extra step. And hustle is a strategy.
Yeah. No, that's incredible, and I like that. And getting connected with people, as you mentioned before, it's like you have one conversation, and years go by. If there's been nothing in between, then there's a chance they remember you. But there's not. You definitely won't be top of mind.
Right.
So I think as brokers, it's like staying top of mind, and one of the best ways to do that is being intentional about the things you talk about, remembering things about that person, but also providing value. And that was one of the main things that I noticed when getting started in the business was kind of like how you said, it's like you had some mentors around you or other people that you could look to. We actually had a leaderboard in our office as far as like total like closed sales volume.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a leaderboard in our Monday meeting every week. And I would sit there as a research analyst and, young person, just got my license, trying to find a way in the business. And I would just see who's at the top of the leaderboard every single week. And then I would just consistently study those people. I would just watch what they did. And it was often, if I could go on a meeting with them or a property tour, like that was just the best for me.
Mm-hmm.
But going the extra mile, writing some handwritten notes, being really intentional, and really, they were the ones that provided the most value to their clients.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why they could provide the most value was because they were the most knowledgeable as well about whatever sector they were in. So that's something I've noticed, from my own career, which I think is along the same note as what you're saying. So for you, getting into the business and
Mm-hmm.
starting to do well, what would you say, was really the turning point, or what was it, for you to become nationally recognized, the top producer, one of the best, Cushman Wakefield? What was it for you that kind of separated you from being just one of the, say, many hundred or many thousand versus, nationally recognized as a top producer in the business?
Well, I appreciate the question. I don't know that I agree with the contextualization, but I'll roll with it. Thank you. Well, listen, there are a lot of great brokers who do local business, and for me, for the first part of my career, I did plenty of that, and it was good old fashioned cold calling and door knocking and sort of the traditional approach. Nothing wrong with that. People can make a very good living. But in 2009, during the last downturn, I sort of had a realization that we had built our lifestyle with 4 kids, just like you, up to a certain level. And what I realized is I had a big component of beta that I didn't really see before, and that is repeatable revenue is hard to come by. So you think about a tenant rep, they wake up on January 1 unemployed. And a friend of mine says, it's pretty boring to know what you're going to make on January 1. So I agree with that. But have the downside is pretty scary. And so I had 4 young kids and a wife, and the party stopped, deals stopped. And so I did 3 things then that have really, really impacted us in the career going forward. The first is I began a strong focus on getting accounts. Multi-market accounts are a great way to make a living. They're not as profitable because you have to pay the field broker, but they are repeatable. And we've got several handfuls now that are changing life. I have transaction managers on them, and great teams and great partnerships. But that changed. The second was a personal issue that I'll share with you and your audience. But that is, we worked really hard to pay off all of our personal debt. And I see a lot of colleagues who have all the shiny baubles and the great things in life. But we know many people, probably all of us in our life, who have shiny baubles, but really no wealth. So they have cash flow, but not wealth. And then when cash flow stops, that's a problem. So we really, after paying off debt, focused on a strategy, which we can talk about if you want, of building wealth.
Yeah.
But the third thing was I looked into this thing called Twitter, and actually reached out to a total stranger who was so kind to take my call. He's at a competitive firm named Coy Davidson & Colliers. And Coy, he and I are going to be together next week somewhere together having an adventure. We've been great friends for many years, but it's the 30 minutes that changed my life of how to use social media. And what Coy told me is it doesn't really matter who you know, it matters who knows you. What I have come to develop is this idea that there are two things that we have to do as tenant reps to be successful in business development once you've identified the prospect. The first is sales. And sales is speaking and listening with the intent to convince. And if you're a broker and you can't do that, probably need to find a different profession. But the second is much harder, and that is marketing. That's my degree. Marketing is what they think about you before you walk in the room. So building up your reputation and thinking carefully about how you're going to sell professional services is so critical to success. Most decision makers assume that you know what you're talking about. What they want to know is that you know about them and you understand their company and their problem, because the decision maker is trying to go from here to there, maybe physically, maybe emotionally, maybe career-wise, and they want to hire someone that they believe can accomplish that goal. And the old joke is, what do you call the person that graduates last in medical school? Doctor?
Yeah, right.
So the same in tenant reps. So trying to build up the perception that you have some expertise and what they think about you before you walk in the room is so important. So that might explain why you see me online a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I want to get to CREI here in just a second. But first, I don't want to miss what you said earlier about building wealth. I mean, it's no secret that in commercial real estate, it's a very lucrative industry and you can make a lot of money. But like you said, a lot of times fancy objects are things that we buy, but then creating real wealth in the business. How did you do that for yourself, and what do you recommend for young people getting into it and starting to do well?
Well, first of all, we're very much in process. We'll see how the party ends. But listen, people confuse the income statement and the balance sheet. The income statement is the cash flow. That's the production. That's the number at the end of the year when you go up in front of the office and you get the little G-Jaw or the trophy or whatever they give you. That's income. And that's terrific. And that's a very important part of the conversation. Maybe those are the carbs in the discussion. But the protein, the protein is the balance sheet. And the balance sheet starts with what I shared with you earlier, which is either controlling or eliminating, or at least having an idea of what your debt's going to be. And I fully understand the demands for the cash. And this is not going to turn into a Dave Ramsey course, don't worry. But
I did think it in my head. Dave Ramsey did pop in my head right there, but I'm glad we're on the same.
And I'm not going to debate Dave. You can think what you want about him, but you got to have your own path towards success. And so what you're trying to do, there's a friend of mine, Nick Huber, who is Sweaty Startup on Twitter. And Nick's, I was with him last week. He's a super smart guy. He's a little bit controversial, but that's okay as part of his strategy. I like what Nick has to say. He says, go out and build some cash over a 3-5 year period, and then start to buy small real estate transactions. And it's beyond probably the scope of this podcast, but there's a whole world of real estate syndicators out there, and you got to be careful. You got to pick them. But if you go to CREISummit.com, you can see the retweet #RETWIT list of people you should follow. There's some really smart syndicators out there. And so for as little as potentially $25,000 or $50,000, you can become a part of a real estate transaction. And there's some really good parts to that. First of all, you're building wealth by investing with those syndicators, and you start adding, 25, 25, 25, 25, and keep going. But the second thing is real estate investing is not your day job. So it allows you to keep the main thing the main thing. Now, you could say, oh, well, let's go buy REITs and we can, there are tax advantages and disadvantages to various approaches. But sit down with someone that you trust in your life and be intentional about that balance sheet, and it will serve you well. And the last thing I'll say is that I do this all the time for young people. If we take a small amount of money, let's say it's $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, and put it in your calculator and do the future value of that over a career and include investing. I can't do the math on the top of my head, but if you put $10,000 and looked at it 40 years later after investing consistently, it can be $2 or $3 million.
Right.
Just that.
Yeah. No, and that's really good advice for the way to start in the investing journey. That's one of the things that I did is I started to park some money in smaller transactions for myself, but I did not go the syndication route. And I thought I was going to for a while there, but one of the things that I did before then was I parked some cash with other real estate syndicators that have been in the business for 30, 40 years, a few $1 billion in transactions, just really, really incredible people that I know, like, and trust. And I watched how they operated a deal. I got the communication, the investor communications. I got to see the balance sheet. I got to see the income statement and really, see what was going on with these assets. And really, like I said, that was a $50,000 investment, but in which, like you said, you get some of that depreciation from it. You can get some cash flow from it. But really, the knowledge that I got from being in the deal and getting that experience, I think is worth a whole lot more than what I put in. So excellent way to learn. And I'm sure doing that, but also there's some good follows on Twitter and LinkedIn and others where you can really learn the business that way. So no, I think that's great advice. So let's talk about CREI. The commercial real estate influencer list. This is something that I believe it's the first of its kind. And something that hasn't been out there. I think commercial real estate was a little bit, forgive me if I'm wrong, or you think differently, but I feel like commercial real estate was slower to adopt the social media technology. It was just a little bit slower. I think that maybe the residential side of the business, because there's many more of them, and that's where more of the consumers, that are buying and selling houses, they're on social more. But I think commercial real estate was a little bit slower to the game of social media. But for now, where it's at today, it is certainly here. It's certainly here to stay. Mm-hmm. And I think the commercial real estate influencer list has kind of captured that. And I think one of the reasons why it's taken off the way it has is because of that. And people were out there looking for something, but they just don't know what. So for people that don't know what it is, if you can give us a brief introduction to what is CREI and then how it got started.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the question. So I'll tell you what it is, and I'll tell you how it got started. So, you talk about the man in the arena, and we look at the broker who is what I call at risk, meaning you are not a salary bonus person. You're a commission only person. That is the man and the woman that's in the arena. We want to celebrate those people that are doing interesting things. And so what CREI stands for is commercial real estate influencers. And I is lowercase because we believe deeply that there's a need for servant leadership in our industry. And there is a negative connotation to influencer, which is, people that are potentially selling goods or clothes or things like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about influence in the business context. So when that decision maker is thinking about hiring you for whatever niche of real estate you're in, you have a reputation that precedes you. The summit, the CREI Summit, and that's the website, you can go check it out. It's going to be in Atlanta, September 11, 12, 13 next year, is all about bringing people from all different segments of our industry together. I believe that iron sharpens iron, and I can learn, Augie, from you. I can learn from Coy that I mentioned earlier. I can learn from many people who are experts in what they do. And there's no place that you can't take a college course. Love the professors that are out there, but they're not on the front lines. And even our friends in corporate marketing are not on the front lines. We're the people out there, spilling blood every day and trying to get hired on transactions. And so we brought together this community of people, and it is a community. I mean, these are they're, except for me, diverse and young, and very kind people. And it's the unconference. It's amazing. And pretty soon, here in the next couple of weeks, we have an exciting announcement that we're going to tease about how we can get together more frequently than once a year. So what it is the idea that we're focused on what I described earlier, which is marketing and branding, and the tools. Therefore, we talk about how you use those tools. It's not just social media; it can be your website, your SEO, your email marketing. And keep in mind that every business executive in America reads email all day, every day. So if you're not using it effectively, it's a missed opportunity. So the way it started?
Go ahead. The way it started, that'd be great.
So there actually was a list before. My friend Duke Long put together a list of people you should follow on Twitter. And in the beginning of COVID, I was making my buddy calls. Hey, buddy, how you doing? And I'll never forget, I was on the back porch because we were all at home. And it was a beautiful March afternoon. And I rang up Duke, and I think like a lot of us, everybody's having a tough time with COVID. But we were talking about the list, which I've always respected Duke's creation of this list because it's such a powerful way to focus attention on people that are doing interesting things. And Duke said he was tired of doing the list. And I said, well, gosh, we're friends. I guess I don't need your permission, but would you mind if I did? And he said, sure. And so the baton was passed, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I have great respect for Duke because it is super hard to put together these lists. His was the only source of truth. And so I spent a lot of time looking around for people to sort of codify our community on commercial real estate Twitter. And so I worked real hard. I was about to publish the first list. I spent a lot of hours on it. And I had a graphic designer that was helping me. And at the very last minute, he said, what if we did a badge? So what do you mean by that? He said, well, if Augie makes the list, let's put his picture up there and tell the world that he's an influencer and he can push that through his social media. And so, unwittingly, our brand was spread throughout the industry because everybody was posting their badge. And then we did a couple of other lists one evening on a CRE chat. Corey Davidson, back in the story again, tweets, hey, it sure would be nice if we could get together. And he later said he meant to drink beer. but I saw it differently, and one thing led to another, and I hired an event planner. And we took some steps between here and there, but I signed a contract with the Ritz and Lake Tahoe, and all at risk to me, and we threw our own conference. And I eat Risk for breakfast. I still can't believe that we pulled that off. But the way we pulled it off was with the wonderful ladies and gentlemen who are volunteering. And we got so many great volunteers leaning in right now. That's the model. And I'm thankful for each and one of the partners, all of my partners who are working on CREI Summit.
Yeah, no, that's incredible, and love the way that it started. And I mean, one of the first things you said about the lowercase I and servant leadership, that's one of the things when I first got on social media was because I started to have success in the business without being on social media. I was young and still am young, and people would just come to me as far as like they would want to know, hey, what am I doing? What tools am I using? How am I communicating with clients? Talk to me more about commercial real estate, just friends and family. And people saw that I was having success, and I really stayed away from social media, and I kind of was just like shy from it. I've never been a user of social, like even, in teenage years and things like that. It just wasn't really my deal. But when I started to have this success in commercial real estate, I was walking around the lake with my wife during COVID. We have a beautiful lake here in Lakeland, hence the name. We have many lakes. But one of the things that I felt a strong conviction for was, I've been blessed with a certain level of success that's special. And if God's going to give this to me at such an early age, what am I going to do with it? And, how am I going to glorify God through my works? And what I've been blessed with here on earth. So that was one of the things where it's like, man, if I'm gonna, be so fortunate to have the success, I want to be sure to point back, where I know it's coming from. And so that was my first, venture into, commercial real estate, or social media in commercial real estate. And that was the big thing is like, I mean, the story of Jesus himself, it's all servant leadership. I think it's incredible that you've done that and have that intentionality just with the name. So
Well, thank you for sharing that story, Augie, and I commend you for leaning in and trying to give to others. And that's what this passion project is about. Um, I think there's a point in your career where you transition from success to significance. And I know
yeah,
that's where you're headed with this podcast and with your coaching and all the great things that you're doing for this industry. So thank you.
yeah. Yeah, no, and thank you, and that's incredible. I love to hear. I love to hear the story of, the summit and how things went. And you talked about it a little bit, but yeah, I can't imagine how the organization and planning went. But when you have an incredible team, that's really the secret sauce that can make things, special. And people ask, how do you do this? How do you do all this? And
Yeah.
it's like, I didn't do all this. It's like, I have an incredible team, which sounds like you do. So.
Well, we do, and
Um,
one more quick thing to share is there's questions about the list, and so we arrived at what we call the Apple DJ model, and so every list now has a curator. In fact, we published the Allison Bedard, who is a leader with Cushman Wakefield in Seattle, was the curator of the women's list, which we published last week, 87 influential women, and so we're
I
now up
saw
to
that.
sorry, we're now up to
I
seven.
said I saw that. That
Okay,
was
good.
awesome.
We're now up to 7 lists. We're going to introduce a new list shortly that is a CRE podcast list. So we'll have to make sure
Oh, right on.
we track the CRE arena as well. But it's been
Awesome.
fun, and you're absolutely right. There are perhaps 50 volunteers working on this at this very moment in different elements and in different areas. And I'm an old Boy Scout, so it's the patrol method.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and I love that you did the women's list, because people will ask me, and females will come to me and ask about getting into the business and commercial real estate. Is it a male dominated industry? And they have asked me questions about it. And while I don't know what it's like to be a woman, I do know what it's like to compete against a woman. And we have some absolute killers in the Central Florida market. Some of them which were on your list. And so I say all the time, like, hey, go look up Jessica Mizrahi, go look up Julia Silva, Monica Wonis, Robin Hurl. These girls are all within an hour and a half drive time of me,
Mm.
and they absolutely crush. And any man in the business, if they know they're competing against one of those women, they know they better bring their A game, and they still might lose. So much respect to those women and the many other on that list. So that's incredible. So I know we're limited on time here. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about before we went is these other things that you've been involved with around commercial real estate. There's been a number of organizations, and sometimes it's hard for young people to look past the next deal or that next relationship or that next transaction. But when switching to the impact side of the business,
Right.
for people that think that, like, hey, I'll do that, towards retirement, or I'll do that later,
Right.
what would you say to the people that are in the business, maybe starting to have some success, or they're brand new with, getting involved in these other organizations and taking part?
Well, I believe in doing well by doing good. And I do believe whether you're week one or year 30 in the business, that you are in the business because there's a community that supported you. There's a community that helped you grow up. There's a community that helped you get educated. There are going to be young people coming behind you. And I have this concept that I had think about called civic rent. To whom much has been given, much is expected. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to lean in and to help. In this case, I think we're referring to not for profits in our community. And
Right.
as a real estate, as a commercial real estate person, and if you're an analyst, there's a role you can play. If you're a lawyer, there's a role you can play. But tenant reps have a unique skill, and that is the ability to sell. And so if you can find something that you're passionate about and in the community, maybe it is a hobby that you had growing up, or maybe it's something that God puts on your heart that you want to serve in some form or fashion, then getting involved in helping with a fundraiser. You don't have to necessarily join a board. But
Right.
everybody wants somebody that can hustle and pick up the phone and raise a few dollars for a cause. And
Yeah.
I, I will tell you, when I say doing well by doing good, I have made some amazing relationships serving in not-for-profit boards that have led directly to significant business and millions of dollars in revenue for Cushman Wakefield. So I wouldn't wait around. And let me make
Yeah.
sure we don't get the cart before the horse. You have to be passionate about the mission and why you're there, but it is okay to do well by doing good.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, very good. So, what's coming up next? Before we go here, I know you've got many things. You said CREI has an announcement in a few weeks. You guys have the summit coming up in September, and I will be there. I'm a maybe on the list. As I told you, number 4 is on the way and due at the end of
Yeah,
August.
I know.
So my
Great.
RSVP is a maybe, but I'd love to be there. And so exciting things coming up along with your book as well. What are some of the things you want the audience to know, and what can we be looking out for? What's next?
Well, writing a book is hard work. I spend Saturday mornings working on it, so we'll get that going. Just as soon as we can. Um, and I think we've got plenty going on with CREI and this announcement that'll be coming in a couple of weeks. So we'll be teasing it shortly, which I'm excited about. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And in terms of where we are, what's coming up, what's next in terms of the economy, I want to give you some hope that they call them cycles for a reason. And if you're an industrial person, it's a different equation. If you're in a different area, but just to talk about office for a second, if you don't mind, Augie, uh,
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
are coming back. I wrote a piece called "The Very First Office Building in the World" about a true story, which maybe quickly just share that the British Navy had the head of the Admiralty, the Lord of the Admiralty was his title, and the King told him to make it the best navy in the world. And back then, and I think it's instructive today, they really didn't have a place to meet. They were working from home, if you will. And what
Yeah.
that meant is when they were getting together, they could get together in the royal buildings, but there were spies everywhere. They couldn't have secret conversations, and they had no place for their work product. Then they went to the monasteries. There were spies everywhere, no place for their work product. Then they went to the bars, and all they did was get drunk. There were no
Yeah.
Starbucks then, by the way.
Yeah.
So the king allowed the Lord of the Admiralty to build the very first office building in the world, which is still there today. And it has that famous boardroom where they had those incredible meetings. And I think as a direct result of that, the British military had the strongest navy in the world for more than 200 years. So the moral
Wow.
of the story is the office is not going away. Quality office is always going to be in vogue. And there are plenty of people that are going to need your advice. And I said it earlier, hustle is a strategy. This business is just fine. We just have to get after it and work hard.
Yeah. Amen. No, I absolutely love that. So, all right. Well, we will post all the links where people can connect with you down below. But Ken, thank you so much for
Great to
coming.
be with you.
And I know this was a massive blessing to myself, and I know all of our listeners as well. So, please like and subscribe to the show, and we'll see you all next time.